Welcome to the PARAcast. I'm your host, Tomas the Boss Hernandez, joining you from in front of the blackout curtains with the towel above it because a little bit too much light comes off on the top. Anyways, I got a lovely 16 hours of sleep yesterday. I got home, went to bed at noon, slept till 8 p.m., picked up the boys. We went out, we hung out for a little bit, ate some dinner, and I went to bed at midnight, and I woke up at 8 a.m. So I feel like
Nice.
I feel like a human being again. It's funny how that feels. I had some cinnamon toast crunch for breakfast this morning. Now my stomach's been hurting. I can't do it. I can't live like this. Anyway, joining us tonight, White Castle or cholera, it doesn't make one damn bit of difference to Robert Wyatt.
It's all coming out the ass end.
He's got 40 minutes to live. I can't stop pooping.
We tried White Castle, and when we were back in Ohio at Nationals, because I'd never been there, and so we stopped there, and I can confidently say it sucks ass. It's the worst fucking shit ever. I hate that stuff.
It's not great.
It's not as bad as Whataburger, but it's really close.
You take that back, you fucker.
No, I stand by what I said. It is trash.
Wow.
Okay,
Wow.
Whataburger
Wow.
is so trash. Like, we went to Whataburger when it was in Vegas, and they were doing this big grand opening. So they had all the upper people, and they were there, like, had to make sure that it was gonna be a big day going off. And I'm like, I gotta try this again, because the first time I had it was in an airport, and the airport sucked. So I buy one, with all the best people and the best cooks and everything, and it still tasted like shit.
That's disappointing.
And
maybe I'm just jaded because I grew up with Whataburger in Texas, and it has a special place in my heart. Mainly because it was the only place open at 2 a.m. and we would go there and get breakfast burritos during high school, and we'd go hang out there, and that's why we loved it. Perhaps not that the food was the best.
Yeah, Dave Blanton, he loves the place. I totally get it, right? I mean, there's McDonald's people, there's Burger King people. I just happen to not like either one of those places, and it's okay because there's a bazillion other places.
All of them seem to be going just straight down to shitter now.
I wonder if we had
every place.
I wonder if we had a time machine. In-N-Out's still pretty good. If we had a time machine and went back and had like a McDonald's hamburger like 7 years ago, and then compared it directly to now or someplace else, like we would all realize like, oh, like this is way more expensive and it tastes like crap. Like I used to feel bad about when I used to feel physically ill after I ate McDonald's, but at least took 12 hours. Now it's like on a 4-hour timeline. Now, granted, my age is starting to deal with something like that, but like I also feel like it's the food. I don't remember ever feeling like ooh from the French fries. And the other part is too, it's like I've been drinking Mexican-made Coca-Cola and Mexican-made Sprite, in the glass bottles. It's the only kind of soda I get. But like when I have that, and then I have like a McDonald's Coca-Cola, and I taste that, and I'm just like, wow, these are like two different flavor profiles. Or you go somewhere else and have their Sprite versus a Mexican Sprite, and you're just like, holy shit! And the Squirt tastes completely distant.
Yeah, I like the McDonald's Cokes.
It doesn't taste bad.
I don't know what they do differently. I really don't, but I know it's different.
It's a different formula that McDonald's has special Coca-Cola. But the crazy thing is like you have the Mexican stuff or like just you drink it for a couple days and then you have the regular stuff. Like the regular stuff tastes fake. It's literally like a Dan Wesson Point Man versus the tea sauce. What would you say? What would you say? The tea sauce man in front. That's the name of that model.
Oof.
The 1911 we have at home kind of thing.
The 1911 everyone has at home because everyone can afford it. I would a Dan Wesson Point Man would be fantastic. Or what do they have? Their other specialist or model or what has the rail and all that.
The specialist is nice, but it doesn't have the fiber optic sights, and the specialist is 10 out of 10 except. Well, it doesn't have the fiber optic sights. So you just have to swap them out.
You have to buy those, and you have to buy it with screws that don't come with hex keys on the top of it. Like, what the hell is wrong with people? Anyways, bought some bullets. Went out to the range. I went up to the armory. The armory.
Wait, I didn't get an intro.
Oh, you didn't get an intro? Oh, I'm so sorry, Jared. The only difference between him and the Kool-Aid Man is a warrant. It's Jared Stepp. Through the wall.
We've done that a couple times. Through the wall ports are some of the coolest things you can do. Because no one expects the SWAT team to come through the wall and shoot you.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I don't expect many people to come through a wall and shoot me, let alone a SWAT
Admittedly,
team.
this is true.
Yeah, like I just like the grandma, anyone
gonna be
comes through a
Robert.
wall and starts shooting me. I'm just like, whoa.
Whoa.
Someone-
I heard
That's
my
how
name
Robert's
about.
going to get taken down.
Well,
Yeah,
here's
that's what I was kind of wondering all of a sudden.
here's what I with going through the wall. Like, I mean, there's got to be a time where people have gone through the wall and just come up against like an electrical panel that's there on that part of the wall, or like somebody had like a dresser that was right there on that part of a wall, or they're on the wrong
That's
side of a
happened.
crib. You're like, oh my gosh.
That's happened, but typically what you do is you actually will probe the wall, and then so you can kind of see what's on the other side, because you need to probe it to find out what's actually inside the wall. So for instance, one day we were at actually an old LDS church that was being demolished by the city. And so the city owned it, and so they gave it to us to go do some science on. So they built one of their normal wall ports, did it on the wall, and it didn't do anything. And the reason was because it was this super old LDS church, and it had like not just drywall, nothing, maybe some insulation, and then drywall. There was like plaster, there was chicken wire, there was all sorts of stuff through
It's
that
called
house.
it's called lath and plaster.
Yeah, so it was a thick boy. Like, so the breachers made a specialty breach just for this wall, and
It's called the
then we did it
458 Magnum.
again, and it was hilarious because it shook the entire building. All the the ceiling tiles basically shook out, and it looked like a genuine disaster zone. And it was cool though, because they made it through the wall. And that's kind of what the hardest part about being a breacher in that specific situation is. It's not just, well, in Copland, you want to not kill everyone in the room, so they have to use the smallest amount of explosive charge to get through the wall that they can. Whereas for military land, actually explosive breaching is much easier, because you just say, oh, we're going to do 200 grains on this bitch. It's going to go through. That's the answer. Whereas in Copland, you have to they start typically with these 25 grain det cord charges, where they'll use a 25 grain hockey puck, or there's all these different types that they'll do with it. But then you can use water to tamp it and use that to try to push it through even more so. And then there's ways to make it go farther. So like most of our explosive breaches are actually built off 25 grain det cord, whereas like a lot of the military land is 100 to 200, and it's just those are some spicy bombs.
Yeah,
but they're fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, that's the one thing. It's just like, yay, let's just go through the wall, and it's just like,
you have to yell, "Oh yeah," as though when you jump through the wall, though, for the first time.
Kool-Aid Man versus Jared. The only difference is sometimes some people are happy to see the Kool-Aid Man. No one's ever happy to see Jared. Anyways, so I guess
at least not when he's popping out of a wall.
Put your dick up, Kool-Aid Man. God damn it.
I went to the armory and I picked up my MP5 receiver because I got it engraved and did all that stuff. And I sat there and I zeroed my USP and my HK45C because I put some Dawsons on both of those. The HK45C at 15 yards was just dead on, just print an X ring from the rest. I was like, oh, and then the USP 2.5 or 2 3/4 inches high at 15 yards. And I called up, Dawson immediately that day, and they sent me out the front side. I got it out on the kitchen counter. You just got to tap it on. And I was just sitting there and I asked him, I was like, I've been wondering this for years. How the hell do you guys decide what sight height to ship out? Is this based off of like a 45 caliber? Is it based off of 9mm? Is it based off of this and that? And he goes, I really don't know. He goes, all I know is that we've set it up at 25 yards and that we have this because the one thing that we know for sure is everyone shoots different ammunition. So we kind of just have something that's in the middle that we're basically within 30,000s, high or low, that people can zero on there. And I was like, oh, that kind of makes a lot of sense. But yeah, because everyone's ammunition be completely different. So I'm tapping those things on. I've been having a little bit of fun with it. The USP is such a cool little vibe, even though it's such a useless. Besides shooting 9mm, it's pretty much useless. It is not to the standard of everything else. And but it's
But it's cool.
it is cool. And the one thing that's super cool is on Wednesday I went out with Jared and we taught a class to some very inexperienced people who were going out there and shooting, and it was a lot of fun. And we talked about some like home defense stuff, but me and Jared kind of manned each side of this range, and Jared was showing them a couple guns, and I was showing them a couple guns over on my side. And you know, the two guns that kind of stole the show for everybody was the Flux Raider and the MP5. And it was,
That checks out.
yeah. And then Jared ripping off 12 splits with his Beretta shotgun and destroying all the targets on his side of the range. That was pretty fun too. But yeah, it was so fun because like we had the Flux Raider out, and the Flux Raider is such a cool little thing, but like the Flux Raider is right on the smallest side of being uncomfortable. So if you're like 6 foot tall and you like kind of cram it in and you're not wearing like a body armor or anything that kind of push it out, you cram it in like it's really, really short. It's a really, really
Right.
short gun, and like you're shooting it, and like the one thing is like it's very light and it has a lot of reciprocating mass, which is kind of interesting. Is like on a handgun, you have this reciprocating mass in the slide, but like all of our bodies and our wrists and the way that we lock everything out is kind of meant to kind of fight that. And when you actually put it onto the shoulder, you actually feel the reciprocating mass of that. Like it's pretty obvious. Like it's much more than like a lot of long guns would kind of be like an AR-15 and 9mm or something like that.
You feel that kerchunk.
Yeah, it's a very sluggish kind of kind of feeling when you're shooting it. And a lot of the times, like they'd go out there and shoot the flocks, then they'd come around, and but we started doing like comparisons with the MP5, the MP5K, and when people started shooting the MP5K, like it just has like another inch and a half on stock length. It weighs 3 pounds heavier. It has a much smaller bolt, and they'd shoot that, and they'd be like, "Oh my gosh, this is amazing to shoot." And I was like, it's great. And the funny thing
Yes.
is, at the end of the thing, we were talking about like what guns did people like, what guns would they like for home defense. Like the two that popped up was like, the husband wants the Flux Raider and the wives want an MP5.
It was an entertaining class. It was a fun time. It was a private group reached out to me and wanted to do like a home defense seminar slash class where I provided all the guns, all the ammo, and basically just kind of gave them a legal how to for home defense, and then guns and a little bit of tactics. And so Tom came out and helped me, and it was a lot of fun. It was a good class. The dangerous part with those classes though was they were very you have a whole gamut of experience at those types of classes because you have these guys who show up and they're like, "Oh yeah, I know everything and I'm the coolest guy and I know all this stuff." And you have that type, and then you have the a lot of the females who had never even held a gun before, but a lot of the guys brought their wives to come take the class. And so it was a very interesting time. The worst thing that happened, it wasn't that bad, but this
That
one lady
bad.
was shooting a P322. It's a little suppressed 22 pistol, and she's about to shoot it. Like I just loaded it for her. I gave her the gun, point this, shoot it. She's about to pull the trigger, and then a hornet just comes out of nowhere and attacks her. And so she goes, "Ah!" and kind of karate chops the air right towards me. But I was kind of what I don't want to say I was waiting for it, but I was right there. So I caught the suppressor, and I'm like, that was almost close. And you heard her husband behind go, he comes up to me afterwards, like, "I'm sorry, I pooped my pants a little bit. I'll be back in a minute." And so that was pretty entertaining. And because they were all like, "Oh, could she not shoot anymore?" I'm like, "It's fine. She didn't flag anybody. She didn't even break the 180. She just got panicked a little bit by hornets, and that happens. That's understandable." So we
Yep.
had a conversation about safety some more. But it was good. It was a fun weekend, fun random day in the middle of the week. But Tom helped out and saved my bacon on that. So
The
that's
what
all I did this week shooting wise.
It was fun because one of the guys who showed up a little bit later, he's Jared was running people through like one of the kind of like close quarters things, and I'm over in the other bay like packing up and stuff like that, and he comes over and is like, "Oh, I wouldn't mind shooting handgun. Like I shot a handgun like 25 years ago," and I was like, "Oh, come over here and shoot this." And so like we're coming over here and we got like 8 guns, 8 pistols on the table, and I'm like, you know what? we're gonna start you on the top floor. Here's this Dan Wesson Valkyrie. And so we load up this Dan Wesson Valkyrie, and I kind of teach him how to hold the gun and how to line up the sights and trying to do like it's like this is a good gun. Here's the difference between double action, single action, and then we had like an LEM and stuff like that on the tables. Like here are the different things, and this is what they mean. He goes, oh, like that's interesting. Now I know what that means. I was like, there you go. So we set him up, and I load it up after we do it dry fire a couple times, and then like at like 7 yards, he puts like all of them in the head box of a USPSA target, and I'm like, that's pretty awesome. He goes, oh man, I really like this. This is really cool. It's like, yep, this is pretty awesome. Then we take him and hand him over a P30 with a dot on it, and he starts shooting that, and the one thing he looks at me and goes, wow, the dots are a lot better. And I was like, they sure as hell are. They sure are. But it was really neat to sit there and people from the ground floor and kind of see what they could do, and it was really fun, and it was a good time, and it was fun to see people like take guns that were like the Flux and were like the MP5, and go out there and shoot those, and then they're immediately on the purchase list, like how much is this? How much where can we get this? And it was just a neat time. But yeah, one of my favorite things is people who were there was a couple, well, not a couple. There was a guy who was like basically saying how super experienced he was, and then he grabs the Flux Raider and then loads the magazine in the front, because the Flux Raider has two magazines, right? The palm where you actually load the gun, and then the front one, and then he loads it, and then he cocks it, and then he like muzzle dips, and then like I was like, that's actually the spare magazine hole. It actually feeds in here. And he flipped. Oh, I was like, all right, this is like okay, dude, all right. Yeah, you see those guys a mile away sometimes. But anyways, Robert.
Dude,
Oh, go ahead.
yeah,
Rick.
a lot of the times, just going off of that, a lot of times, I actually dislike talking to people about guns in like normal life, if that makes any sense.
Oh yeah.
Like
Yeah.
at USPSA, it's a lot of fun, or if I'm at training school, something along those lines, it's a little bit more fun. But like when I'll be like out with my wife's friends, and they're like, "Oh yeah, cop, wow, that's so cool. I shoot guns too," and then they want to talk to me about guns, and a lot of times it just hurts my soul, the conversations that these
Why
people
is
will
that?
have. Well, they just talk about all these random things about like, and it kind of goes back to a long time ago. Me and you, Robert, had this conversation about how there are everyone deserves the Second Amendment, but do they? Where you just talk to these people and like their knowledge about guns, or like they're like arguing about like, oh yeah, you should carry empty chamber, or like, oh yeah, the Israelis do this, this is the best way, oh yeah, the vice president said this about shotguns, or like, and they just start throwing this stuff out, and you're just like, oh, I don't want to have this conversation right now. And
Yeah,
that's,
it's
you know what I
well,
mean though?
well,
I
it's
get it. It does make sense, and it's hard because you and Tommy and those of us in practical shooting. I mean, this is our life. This is a huge chunk of what our life is, and so we see firearms from a perspective that most people, like,
It's very different.
very, very different. And I don't say that with there's no negativity of that. It's
Right.
just a different world. And yeah, it's like we were talking. It's like, I am very hardcore Second Amendment. I think everybody should be able to have a firearm if they want one.
100%.
But damn it, there's some people that probably shouldn't have a firearm because they scare the shit out of me.
well, it's
But
kind
also, have you worked at a gun store?
Yeah.
me
like,
me
eh.
talking about guns to people is like explaining the nuances of the Jedi Order. Like when I talk to people, it's like imagine you're talking about Star Wars to somebody, and then they go, "Well, actually, this and this and this and this about the Jedi Order and the lightsabers, and this is the seventh technique of the lightsaber." And like so, when I talk to guns about people and they bring up something, I was just like, "Okay, like." I feel like it's my responsibility to save you time, money, and effort that I had to spend to learn these things. And so I want to do that. And so, like, a lot of the times, there's a handful of people at work where they come up to me and they'll be like, what do you think I should do with this? What do you think that? Like, I want to put a dot on the gun. What's the dot going to be for? Go get a Holosun 510. That's all you need for that. You'll be okay. Like, that kind of like conversations. These people like listen and whatever. But if it's like, oh, I went shooting you know who likes guns? Tom. And then I'll just be like, and I don't want to talk about it. And it's just like I don't I
It's hard because like my dad, and you hear these stories from people who served in war and stuff like that, where they would have these new people come in, and you didn't really want to associate with them. You didn't want to spend time with them because they're probably going to get killed. And sometimes like you'll have people that'll come up like, "Oh, I heard you do guns." "Yes, I do." "Tell me about it." And they like, "I want a gun." And you're like, "Okay, well, do you really want a gun, or do you just want to know whatever's the cheapest thing out there?" And you don't want you want to talk about, I don't know, it's hard. You want to talk about it, but you kind of don't.
I'm
And that
perfect.
sounds elitist, and I don't mean
It's like
that.
Jesus.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about it.
I
You're supposed to want to, but you just don't.
The-
You just don't want to.
I find it much easier to talk to people about Jesus than guns, but like I'm fine with like talking about guns if it's in an environment where it's just like, okay, now we're gonna like listen and here's some examples of this and here's that and this is why you wouldn't want to do it. But the casual conversation is like it's in the break room and it's 8 minutes before start time. It's just like
Right.
I don't want to do like I don't want
yeah.
to have to sit here and go through this and just be like,
Yeah.
no, because it's like
And then it gets political, and then it's just like, oh, can we not do that? And that's my main thing is it's just tiring. And it's not like it's trying to be like a holier than thou or an elitist position. It's just a lot of times it just gets tiring. And the other thing that gets me mad is when people will come up and be like, hey, what do you think about this gun over here? I heard that this Grip Zone XD 2.057 is the best gun ever in the world.
Yes,
And
it
you go,
is.
well, it's not, I mean, it is a gun, but it's not perhaps the gun I would choose or the gun that any other sane human being would choose. And they're
Yeah.
like, oh, well, I bought it.
I mean, if
Mine now.
if someone
And
says,
oh, I recommended like 30 different guns to you, that would be a better option. And so now you're just going to ignore everything I said to just go do your own thing. And
yeah, like
All
I,
right.
I get the
That's what people that that show up at like the new shooter match, and they have their pistol mags backwards.
right.
And that's fine. And I tell them that's fine. You can just, and I understand where it comes from because it's a rifle thing. The rifles, you tend to beer can and you shove them in that way, and so that's what they've learned, which fantastic.
I like
But I
the
always tell
people
them
with
every
the
single
double.
time, I'm just like,
I want
I was gonna say, I always tell them every single time is like, you can do this, but nobody good does it that way. And it sounds kind of snotty, but I'm like, this is the right way to do it. But in that environment, people are much more inclined to listen to your advice. I mean, like I've so many
yes.
times Jared's situation that happens like a lot. Hey, what do you think of this gun? Well, it's okay. Oh, I just bought one. Well, you will have fun with it.
What do you think about the Ruger Red Hawk for self-defense? What?
Do you? And then the second question is, do you already
Alex,
own it?
It's a terrible idea.
It's fantastic. If you already own it, it's great. It's the best gun that I thought about
Don't
getting one
miss.
myself.
Don't miss.
The magazine pouch thing, my favorite is the guy who's got the Springfield XD magazine pouch, and he's got one facing forward and one facing back, but it's neither the ones that you thought should be facing forward or facing back. It's just
Correct.
the front one's facing backwards, the back one's facing forwards. Those are the kind of things that I'm really into. But like the one thing that it's always better to do it at the range, because it's like then you shoot and then they go like all their preconceived notions or ego that was associated does not hold up to the skill test. And then
Sure.
and then it's just like now they're an open book, and it's like, yes, you should not buy this. This would be an overpriced gun, or this isn't the right way to go about it. All that jazz too. So like I'm happy to do gun talk when I'm doing gun things. But if I'm backing trailers up all night, the last thing I want to do is like, hey, should I buy the Kimber Mako? And my answer would be like, no, buy a Glock 26. And they'd be like, but I really like the Kimber Mako. And it's just like, well, all right. Like
That's my favorite. That's the best when they say, but I want to.
But
and then you go, then go with it. Go for it, buddy.
I want a Kimber TLE too. You know why? Because it's an old SWAT gun. But I know that gun's a piece of junk, and I'd have to do a ton of work on it, and it's just not going to work out for me. But like I know what I'm going into. But like for a lot of these things, it's just like it's not I'm not going to invest and dive into your soul and retch it out and fight with this evil demon that's possessed you and exorcise it. I'm just going to say, all right, go with God.
I think there's
Yeah,
a
that's
difference when you can get them out into your world, in like, okay, we're now on the range together. Let me tell you why I think this. The
well, and that's
conversation
a very
changes.
different conversation is if you're
Yeah.
actually at a gun range and being able to show them. And so, for instance, like that one of the guys at the class, he was very, very like it was funny because he thought he was very tactical. He thought he was very like, oh, I'm a ninja, and he was doing this shooting stuff where he'd go, bah, bah, and come into like this weird weaver like John Wick fucking combat access relock stance, and he'd go shoot, then he'd come back into this. I'm like, what are you doing? And then he shot the shotgun, and I was kind of joking around, but I was talking about how no, shotgun's going to be by far the most devastating firearm that a civilian can own, just because the amount of destruction that you can unleash if you get very good with this. And I explained that I can empty this entire tube, so seven rounds of buckshot in under 1 second, and like I can that that is an obscene amount of violence that can be inflicted in that direction in under 1 second. There's nothing that can beat that in a civilian aspect. And I think because these people didn't really know me, they hadn't really seen me shoot before. They haven't come to matches or anything along those lines. And so I was kind of talking to them about the correct way to hold the shotgun. And then I said, okay, here, I'm just going to show you this real quick. And so I grabbed the buckshot. So it wasn't bird or anything. I grabbed the buckshot, loaded it up, and I said, so this is what I'm talking about. And I went up and just did, and I did like 4 or 5 shots, probably what, Tom, 13, 14
Yeah.
splits, maybe faster, and just ripped them out. They were all on target at 7 yards. And the guy next to me was just like, holy shit. Those were like hitting the target too. I'm like, well, yeah, that's the point. I'm like, but this is what you can do is like if you actually get correct instruction and we can delve into this, I can actually talk to you about all this and I can show you how all this works.
Yep.
But this is the difference. And I mean this again in the nicest way, like, but this is the difference between you and I. Like, if you're just going out and hanging out and shooting soda cans or apples or watermelons out on the West Desert, there's nothing wrong with that. That's an absolute blast. I've done it. It's a great time, but it's a very, very different game to actually be able to run the shotgun as fast as humanly possible and to do what this versus that. They're two different sports. It's NASCAR, F1,
Well,
whatever you want to call it, versus driving your Honda Civic to work.
Right.
Well,
And
it's
when I talk to people about like, well, because they'll come in and like law enforcement is always it's the gold standard. It's what people always kind of look to who don't know. It's the ignorance of gold standard, right? And but I was trying to explain to people is like, look, I mean, people who shoot USPSA or IDPA, these practical shooting style games, this is a hobby. This is something that they put tons and tons of rounds downrange. They're trying to actually become good at it. For a lot of people in law enforcement, a pistol it's a part of their job. They have to qualify with it, but that's all they take it to. And you can take it's exactly what Jared's saying. You can take all of this and you can take it as far as you want. Get really good instruction, get really, really good at doing this, and you'll go far. But it's what you want to get out of it.
Well, the one thing too, it's like stuff that's actually effective, and if you're not testing yourself in a basis where you can actually be graded to see whether or not you're effective enough, then all you're doing is whatever feels and looks good to you in your own mind.
Yeah, that's why I wish I wish the tactical trainer community had some kind of a classification system similar to what you see in IPSC USPSA, so that your average person could actually come in and say, oh, okay, well here's the grading of where all these people actually are, and
Well,
it's not just some dude that they saw at the local gun show or whatever.
the problem is that the majority of quote unquote tactical instructors, and this is coming from a guy who I've been to pretty much all the top of the list tactical Timmys at the top of at this time. I've been to a lot of different training, and most of the firearms instructors out there in the police or the tactical world are B class shooters.
Right.
Most of them are B class shooters. Some of them are A class, and maybe a handful are M's or GM's. I would literally say maybe a handful. And this is talking about guys from SEAL Team 6. This is guys from Dev Group. This is the tip of the spear guys. This is CAG. This is, all the fancy fants, whatever new acronym they've come up to name themselves. Task Force 141 or 151 or whatever Captain Price is
one
on.
for one. One for one. Those are the only guys
141.
I'll train with.
And so that's the thing, though. Like most of the guys on those groups, if they actually come out and shoot a USPSA match, and I actually have shot with guys like that with those credentials in a USPSA sitting, and they're about a Class B or a Class A shooter in USPSA. And a lot of the reasoning is because their movement. Their shooting is actually like an A class or an M class, but most of the time their movement is just shit. It's just they don't do that game. And so you see these guys trying to come across and they do so poorly, and that's why they don't talk about their classifications, or they don't do this. Or you see all these tactical Timmies who are running on Instagram talking about their competition stuff, and then all of a sudden they go to USPSA Nats and they're all getting shit on. And then they talk about, oh, big sad. And the thing is, it's like, guys, that's okay. It's not the end of the world if you're not the most competition guy. People aren't going to you because you're a competition shooter.
Yeah.
I wouldn't go and try to learn from a lot of these tactical guys competition shooting. I'd want to go learn other things. But there's a difference there, and I don't know. There's a lot of crossover, but there's a lot of stuff that doesn't cross over, and it's not the end of the world. And I think people just need to realize that it's okay to not be an M or a GM and be some god tier running around goat on fire competition guy in the tactical world.
What did you say, Tommy? Is like shooting is shooting and tactics is tactics? Or
Yeah,
something like that?
Right.
well, it's like shooting, tactics. Like just because you're a better shooter doesn't mean that you'd be a better soldier or police officer than somebody else. It's like it's a completely different job. It's like if there was a sport which was like backing 53-foot trailers up or driving double 45s while shooting, I'd be pretty fucking good at it because I'm good at both. But like that's not what it was. And if there was
That
a gig,
sounds fun.
the melee is pretty devastating. But like there's there's a lot of stuff that's like that. Not all skills translate. And honestly, it's like the better you are at USPSA, it might apply to slowing things down a lot more. But like definitely, I mean, I think we have all learned that like the shooting skills progress to a certain point, and then you're like learning USPSA game stuff because you have to learn USPSA game tactics and how to progress through a stage to get the next 20% of the score on the stage. Right. So they're just different. They're just different things. That's all they are. They're different things, but the shooting part is shooting. And so,
Correct.
a lot of those guys, that are like that do pretty well on like the stand and deliver type arenas that a lot of like square range drills are based off of. Like there's a lot of these guys that could shoot a shitty, medium course and would have a bad time, but like they could clean a Bear Solutions like startup drill, pretty well.
Right. Well, so like the tier 1 concealment guy, the tier 1 concealment guy,
yeah, Jared Clausen
or whatever. He's a obscenely good stand and deliver shooter. Like he has trick shots out the wazoo on his page, and he does all this crazy stuff. Obscenely good at that stationary shooting. But when he comes out to a USPSA match, he typically doesn't do that well, just because it's a different sport and it's a different set of skill set that he hasn't put a ton of time and effort into, because it's not going to make him any money.
Well, sure. And I mean, we always have to remember that that USPSA is still a game. Right. And what I always try and emphasize to when I do the introduction class is this is a game. It's a game like any other game. And like I always tell this story is like when we buy a new board game, we open the game up, we put all the pieces out there, and Andrea has the rule book like in her left hand, and we're just sitting there looking at the rule book, trying to figure out how to play the game. And we'll play that way for a couple different games of just learning the game. And that's what it is in USPSA. So it speaks exactly to what you're saying, Jared. Most officers have like a B or an A class stand and deliver skills that they're actually quite good at because the academy is good. But they don't know the game. They don't know how they've got to go around the board a couple times. Once they do that, they start to pick up the tips, the tricks, all these little nuances that make you really good at the game. And it's not to say that, well, this is a game, so just forget about it because killed in the streets. There's a guy, was it Matt Little said, if you become good at the shooting aspect so that you know that you could roll into a room and you could hit a head box while moving, that helps you in your professional career because
Right.
it's less mental energy trying to be like aim, 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 aim. You know that you can draw down on that, hit it, and keep
Right.
moving on.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of
That's-
overlap. There's good to everything.
There's good overlap, but the one thing that always has to be remembered, and it's the one thing for competitive shooting, is that the best shooters in the world shoot USPSA. Like that's the best people who are good at holding a gun and shooting
Goes
the
back to
handgun.
what you talked about, Robert. No
Huh?
one good. Everyone good does it this way.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
If you want to get good, this is how you do it.
yeah, and it's just it is the what is it? It is the undaunting, unflinching eye of the crucible that people go through and see exactly how they kind of lay out.
Well, and it's shooting competitively, it has so many benefits just from the standpoint of just learning that you can do a lot of things with a little bit of pressure. Like it's like competitive shooting is a little tiny bit of stress pressure. If you ever, had to get into that real tactical, dynamic life or death situation, you're going to have a lot more stress. And if you can kind of inoculate yourself um, through competitive shooting, just so you kind of understand what it's like, it allows you then when something happens, it allows you to kind of fall back and be like, okay, I've dealt with this in a small way. I can deal with it in a big way.
Right. Honestly, like kind of going back to what you said, Robert, the best thing about what Matt Little talked about, the best thing that I think that this sport does for us in martial aspect, in a martial world, is it allows you to process things and get good at processing things much obscenely faster than others who do not do this sport or this game or this type of thing, or if they're not doing some sort of physical activity, whether it's mountain biking or baseball, football, whatever, it doesn't matter, but doing some sort of sport that actually takes a lot of speed and skill of brain processing, eyes, all these things working in conjunction to try to identify something and then solve a problem on the fly. That's one of the best things that actually I think USPSA does. It keeps your brain sharp for when you do see stuff, you can instinctively react and you can process it a lot faster than those who don't compete in these type of sports or things, because I see it all the time when we do these training days at SWAT. We do training days all the time where I'll be going through and doing stuff and they're like, well, Jared, you can't see that fast. You can't shoot that fast. I'm like,
watch me.
then how come I've hit the hostage taker perfectly every single time and I haven't missed once?
Yep.
Well, because you've gotten lucky. We've done this 10 times. The hostage taker has a real hostage. Like there are two real people in there. They're moving around. And every time I do it, I destroy them because it's not that I'm a better shooter. That helps. And it's not that I have more confidence that also helps. But it's honestly, I think it's the processing speed. I have a much more refined processing speed than others just because of the game.
Well, the one thing is that it may not be your ability to see and think faster. It may not be that. What it could be is your ability to deploy the weapon because of the repetition of the movement is much faster. So that kind of goes into the processing speed. Like you see, just like
it's
an average human
combination.
Yeah, like but the ability to deploy the weapon is just like some grip on Call of Duty, like plus minus 50% to ADS speed, right? Or something like that. Like you know exactly how to pull it up and to line it up, and then that's the advantage of what appears to be processing speed. I do believe that there is
that really
I do believe that
Sorry.
there is a benefit, like there is an actual processing speed of seeing things at that fast. Like when we start drawing for like under a second, when you start doing in USPSA, like the second the beep to beep timer feels like, God, this is impossible. Like this is for me to move my hands, and then you start getting used to it, and then you like start drawing at 8/10 or like do 0.75s the first shots, and then you're like, oh, a second sounds forever. That's a forever. What was that? 2.5 seconds? That par time's forever. Everyone can get this done, sort of
Yeah,
thing.
well, it's
Mm-hmm.
why is it like so? What I talk about in my intro class is like why is it when you first turn 16 and you got your driver's license, you're driving down I-15 down the freeway, and you've got both hands 10 and 2, this white knuckle death grip, and you're just like just paying attention, like just very very concentrating. But fast forward to today, you're driving down I-15, steering with your knee, texting on your phone, eating a Big Mac in the other hand. What's changed? Your ability to process information at speed
Because
has
we
allowed
now
you to
all
do other
slightly
things.
we all now slightly want to die, Robert.
This is true.
That's called being an adult.
Well, a lot of people,
That's adulting.
a lot of people deploy those kind of things that they're doing while they're driving without actually processing anything as they go. But yeah, it's like
But follow my point. My point is still valid. I mean,
Yeah.
you've learned how to
Yes.
do things a lot more efficiently, and that's so it's like basically it's kind of like it's pushed into your subconscious so that you just know that I can swing into this, I can swing onto this target, and I can just keep doing this. And so all that, because the conscious brain is very slow by comparison to the subconscious. And I know this is getting into the weeds of things, but I mean, if you can just subconsciously just draw down on that and just hit it and move, you're allowed to do other things.
Yeah, the other thing too, it's like the automatic sorting of information that you are discarding and sorting without even being conscious of it.
Sure. Yeah.
It's like driving. It's like there's plenty of information that comes in that your just mind goes, not needed, not needed, not needed. Even so much to the fact that like you could have a sign that says, "Hey, street closed to the right," and then like you will still take the right hand turn and go down and be like, "Ah, shit," because that thing wasn't like, you know, that those street signs you generally do not have to read because they don't pertain to you. It's like it's the color orange. Fine, I've been on this route a million times. I don't have to watch these yellow signs. It's okay. But anyways,
Yeah.
that's that. And if you would like to process faster, well, at least look damn good doing it. Head on over to Dominate Defense and American Operator Gear. Use promo code PARA10 and get the finest concealment belt, the finest competition belt, the Mach 1 speed belt that you can possibly get. Strap all your stuff into it. My competition belt has hung in my closet gently and correctly and perfectly for about 5 months.
I
But
haven't used it.
it hangs there and it looks beautiful. It looks great, but I've been wearing the concealment belt every day. Check him out. Use
I
promo
just
code.
got one. It's cool.
Yeah, no,
You did a good job with
yeah,
that.
they're
Gotta
fantastic.
order one of those concealment belts.
Yeah,
So-
it's nice. I like it.
Use promo code PARA10, save 10% off. Also check out W74 guide rods. Get some bass in that trunk. You know what I'm saying? No treble. Check that out. Use promo code tungsten accessories and springs and guide rods and stuff like that for your firearms. Use promo code PARA10 and save 10% off of that. And check out Rune Tactical. Get a +1. Get your magazine, springs, your followers to get more ammunition in your mag. Use promo code PARA10 as well. Head on over to Telegram. It's a messaging app. You'll love it. You'll get your entire family on it. You'll like it so much. And then you can ask us questions too on Telegram. Robert?
Let's see. Robert, I always miss the pre-show call for questions. Maybe you'll see this before the next. Oh, sorry. Could you provide restaurant recommendations sometimes between now and Utah State? A couple years ago, you recommended a burger place that was awesome. I hope it's still open, and some Mexican restaurants I never got a chance to try. Looking forward to shooting and working the match.
That must have been Crown Burger
Crown
/
Burgers.
Apollo /
Hires.
Astro.
I mean, those,
Weirdly,
yeah,
they're all the same place.
yeah. It's all
Find
the
a
family.
Crown Burger.
You can't go wrong. Crown Burger, Apollo Burger, Astro Burger. It's all the same family. Get a whatever their pastrami burger is. Get that.
Yep.
10 out of 10 would recommend. It's very
Don't
very
get
tasty.
the pastrami burger. Get the Western.
The
It's
Western's
onion
pretty
ring
good.
And bacon.
Oh, I have heard about that. Yeah, actually.
Onion
okay,
rings,
so the
bacon.
Get both.
barbecue
You're going to
sauce.
be hungry as hell. Get both.
Yeah,
What are you
double
going to do?
fist it. Double fist
Bam,
that
bam,
thing.
bam, bam,
Have
bam.
both
I
of those
did actually go to the
burgers.
Crown Burger up on 33rd. This was, God, it was probably 2 years ago, and I ordered a pastrami burger, and I took it back to the office, and I started eating the thing, and it wasn't actually pastrami. It was just very nice, thinly sliced fat. I didn't need any more. It took me a while to go back to that.
I like the
place.
thinly sliced fat. My favorite part of the whole thing is like when I'm making a beef brisket, off of the shoulder there, where pastrami comes off of, is that layer that you trim off all the fat, like you get like a good quarter inch or 2.5 inch fat off the top. That cut, that's a little bit of the fat, like it's 50% fat and 50% of the beef. Gosh dang, does that stuff taste good? Like when you see a big old fatty chunk on a piece of steak, dude, that is like, oh, who's cutting that shit off? I love that. That
It
gristle,
depends. It depends
buttery.
on the steak, and
Oh
it depends.
God,
It depends
no,
on the fat.
Tom.
Almost all the fat
If
I
it's
eat.
nice and like, if it's actually like rendered and like, for instance, picanha fat, that is perfect. Whereas sometimes New York strip fat has some gristle in there. Ribeye fat's normally pretty good, but I don't know.
As
I
somebody
had a
who's
very
The fat on the
fancy
top of the
New York
tri-tip.
strip.
yeah, as somebody who's like entire like food selection choices based on texture, I'm gonna go ahead and say no.
he's
That
like,
just sounds awful.
he's gonna give you his top 10
That's
list for
fair.
chicken nuggets in the valley.
Oh well, that's actually easy. McDonald's has them.
The Mexican restaurant was called Red Iguana, and that place is always very good. It's actually not that far away from the match from Lee K. It's not that far, but Red Iguana is freaking delicious,
There's
and
that
I would highly recommend going there.
there's the
Mo
Mobetta's
Betta's?
place that you took me to that I've now since gone a lot of times to. Really, really like that.
I
It's
still
like
think
Hawaiian.
I've
That's
never
actually
been there.
awesome.
Yeah,
Well,
it's
no, I just said I'd never had a chance, and so when we finally went there, I was like, oh damn, this is legit. I've now taken Mercedes there. I've taken Andrea there. Yeah, it's
teriyaki
it's actually
chicken.
really awesome because like after the match, you want to eat, but sometimes like eating heavy. Mobetta's never felt heavy to me.
Oh,
It's just good, tasty food.
teriyaki chicken and white rice, dude. Like I could eat white rice till I died. Like that's if I come down with some terrible cancer disease and I'm on my last thing, just keep bringing me white rice. It's like it's over, folks. White rice and soy sauce.
I like that brown rice, man. It's good
White
stuff.
rice and soy sauce. It's just like no wonder we try to take over those countries. It's freaking fantastic. Get that white rice trait locked down.
Let's see. I'm going to my first USPSA match. I've been to a lot of major 3-gun matches. We don't have chrono stages. So how does chronograph work? I also want to order some base pads. How do I know if they're legal? All the web pages have a disclaimer about checking with them. The mag gauge I do not have and don't plan on buying a mag gauge. Is there another way to measure them? The ones I'm looking at are Springer Precision. This is for an STI.
The Springer Precision ones, I mean, they all kind of put that in there because it's very hard to kind of figure out the variance of what you're going to have. But generally, the Springer Precision and the Taylor Freelances and stuff like that, they're all going to be on a large majority on the magazines. They are going to fit, and like on big factory magazines, they're going to fit. Like here's the idea: if it doesn't fit on the base pad that you have, then I would just switch to a different magazine and see if it fits on that magazine. If you get a Springer Precision and you think it's going to be too long, I don't know what's a good way of measuring it without a mag guide.
Well, if you have a what do you call it? The thing we use for bullets.
The only ones
calipers
I've ever heard not fitting the 141 millimeter rule set were the SIG P320 original
71, right?
Yep.
Right. But like from a staccato or STI standpoint, I haven't ever heard of a 141 not of a base pad not working on those, right? Have you guys?
Yeah,
Right.
I maybe in the early days, but no, not today, not by today's standards.
Yep.
So like
it's pretty.
I don't
mature.
measure any of my mags. I've never measured a single one of my mags. I just buy them and say, this is the 141. And they say, okay. And I just buy them and go.
Yeah.
I've never really seen an issue with it except for those first gen SIG P320, the Legions, wasn't it? Where the
21 round
X5?
tube.
No,
Yeah,
the X5s. Yeah,
the 20 round
rounders.
tubes. Yeah, the 21 round tubes were not great. And so even like when you got some different base pads that still capped the gun at 21 rounds, maybe give you 22, they had some issues.
There was a time when I'm trying to remember exactly how this happened. Basically, they had made the base. It was a company made the base pads like just right to the nuts. And when somebody put that Velcro-y sticker stuff on the
Mhm.
back of their base pad, it then made it too long for the mag gauge, and the chrono officer was just being a dorkfish that day. But yeah, the industry's pretty mature at this point. I mean, if they're going to fit, they're going to fit. And
Well,
Springer Precision has been around for a long time. They make quality product. I think it'll be just fine. As far as chronograph
as far as the
is
mag gauge,
concerned,
the mag
oh, go
gauge,
ahead,
like
Tommy.
any local club's going to have a mag gauge. Go shoot your local
Yes,
club and then just
true.
go
They
like,
should.
I need to see the mag gauge.
Or just
Well,
in the shooters meeting, you're gonna have some autistic guy there who has his own. Just raise your hand and say, "Hey guys, I'm going to a major. Does anybody have one of these damn mag gauges?" And then some guy there will be like, "Oh yeah, I got one. I could show you."
And then honestly, I mean, if you go to this assumes that you have multiple different types of magazines, but if you go up to the chronograph officer at the match before you actually start shooting, you can ask them to use their gauge. And if it doesn't fit, then I mean, I know people who have taken the magazine and they've ground it down on the concrete until it fit at Utah State.
Yep.
So there you go.
Science.
As far as doing chronograph, when you get to the match, it's typically on the first stage. They're going to ask for 8 rounds, and they'll take that and they'll put that in a bag along with your name, rank, and serial number. And that'll go off, and that'll just be held until your squad gets to the chrono stage. And then they'll use your gun, and they'll shoot 3 rounds across the chrono, and they should make power factor, whatever it's
They're
minimum
gonna
or major.
they'll pull a bullet to make sure
They'll-
they'll pull
They're
a
going to do
bullet
that
to
in
make sure that
advance.
it is highly advantageous that you do not give them a mixed lot of bullets of 115s and 124s, because if they pull one of the 115s and then shoot some 124s through the chrono and your velocity comes up short, not good. So make sure that your bullets are all uniform that you hand over to the chrono.
Yeah, so like when I show up at a match, if
Have your
I'm
gold
shooting
dots ready.
bingo. So if I'm shooting 124, I make sure that my gold dots they're not hollow points this time. Because I don't want them to be like, why are you shooting FMJs and these ones are hollow points? I'm like, yeah, mistakes. Beyond that, bring $20 for the guy shooting across the chrono,
The
and it'll be
real
good.
the real answer is chrono's super easy. Don't worry about it. They will just walk you through it. It's a very simple and easy process, and it's not something you really need to worry about.
Yeah.
Unless you're doing like your own squirrely ass reloads where you're trying to blade run that 125.1 power factor.
And if you do
They
that,
walk you through it, and it's super easy.
you better own a chrono, and you better be like, if you're gonna get that close, then you also got to test it in different types of weather. But yeah, like if you're
shooting factory 124 grain bullet, you'll always pass.
Yep.
You'll just always pass. If you're shooting 115s and you're using some of that cheaper stuff, I'm just trying to think, but some of the cheaper stuff, you may have issues.
Winchester
this is
white box,
obviously assuming minor.
Winchester white box NATO, that shit will pass. I think in any generation of time and in any state, that stuff will do it.
Yeah.
I need a chrono my new. I got all this HSL 115. I gotta go chrono that, see what it even's shooting at.
It's 3-gun ammo.
They're 115s.
Yeah.
Interesting. No, the only problem with the 115s is I don't know. The 115s are fine. You just have to make sure that the stuff that you buy, if it's factory, that you actually have to chrono. Because yeah, it's I don't know. And now I can't find anything. So talk while I look for all the rest of the questions.
Yeah, I guess the one thing that with 115 factory stuff, it's like, yeah, they're always trying to save a little bit of powder here and there. And so that's the one thing that always kind of comes up a little bit short, because you can't shave any more off the bullet. So if it's a typical grainage of the bullet, then you're going to start dropping on that stuff. But like,
and again, if you're having a new thing, if you've never been to a major before, just ask the guys at the club, and at the next match, be like, "Hey guys, does anybody have a chrono here today? I just want to chrono my stuff." And honestly, guess what? those guys who bought that brand new Garmin are going to be so excited to use it because they're like, oh, actually, I have it here in my back pocket.
Yeah, here's the new.
It's so
Yeah.
small. It's so great. They're going to be so jazzed to use it. Most everybody in this sport is a very happy to be there type of person. And so if you ask for help, it's super easy. It's way better than having to buy this stupid fancy pants mag gauge online or this or that. Just ask your club. Reach out, ask the local guys and be like, hey guys, this is what I'm doing. Do you guys want to do a day or where we can do chronos, or we can plan on having a chrono before this next major match? I know we have like 15, 20 people from our club going to the state sectional. Why don't we do a chrono after the next match? That'll be nice and simple and easy. It'd be fun, and we can figure out maybe some carpooling too. Like there's an easy way to do that, and that's what I would just bring it up in your next shooters meeting, and that's the best way to do it.
Having said that, if anybody needs a chrono and there it slips in next week, I'll have mine there.
Do you have a Garmin?
I did buy the Garmin.
Or do you have a lab?
I don't have the lab radar.
Oh my gosh, the lab radar. So 2019, Jared, get over yourself. You
what
can't.
A poor.
Whoa. Ugh.
Your chronograph's only $400.
Well, it's what I tell everybody. Like when I bought that, Andrea actually is the one who really convinced me to buy it, and the big reason for it was I have the
Garmin.
Yeah, because I have the indoor, I have the old ones with the light things, and I would try and use them at the armory. They just never work. I mean, just didn't work. But I mean, the lab radar obviously at the time was expensive. The Garmin came out. It was a good price, small in your pocket, and it's been a game changer. In the USPSA magazine, Jody Human went and put an article out talking about how they used it at Area 1. It works exceptionally well. I get the digital version of it.
Good for you.
My God. I have the digital version. Shut up.
The digital version has cartoon naked women in it. That's why Robert's down with it.
That's not the USPSA version. Let's see. Question from Alex Mansfield. Alex Mansfield would like to know how to cook bacon.
On a
Why
cast.
does Alex Mansfield refer to himself in the third person?
Because Alex Mansfield has his own show.
And
Alex is an awesome Alex.
Cast iron, dude. Suck it up. You're gonna get a grease cover off of Amazon. You're gonna get the little grease cover that's wire mesh, very very fine wire mesh. You don't get splatter everywhere, and you're gonna cook it on a cast iron, like you're meant to. All this baking shit and trying to get away from actually frying bacon, like quit being a bitch. Get the cover. Do it. You know what? Screw the cover. Take off the cover. Do it with your shirt off. You want it that bad? Freaking earn it.
Dick out.
I don't know.
Okay,
like
that's a stupid answer. That would hurt.
No, so actually I heard recently about somebody who puts a little bit of water in the bottom of their pan when they're first cooking bacon. They'll cover just the bottom of the pan with just a little bit of water. You put down the bacon, and that water evaporates by the time the oil's really coming out, by the time the grease is coming out. So it cooks it very nice and evenly on that side. Because sometimes you'll like put the bacon down and then it gets like a bubble, and then like this part's not cooked and that part is cooked. And so I was curious. I've been meaning to try that way because I've seen that a couple times on YouTube videos, but I just use the little press, one of the little like
a burger
meat presses,
burger meat press. That's exactly the size
press.
of the bottom of your cast iron. That's a game changer. Like burgers came up so much better. Gosh, I take like an idiot. They come out so much better when you have when you have a meat press on it.
I put it in an oven and I air fry it.
Yep, and that's how you tell. And he shoots a shadow too. That's how you tell which one of us is gay. There's no other way to do it.
All I'm saying is it actually comes out perfect. I don't have to worry about putting water or putting a meat press on it. It just comes out perftake.
And then he takes a couple bites, and then he takes his AIDS pills, because that's what happens. That's how he gets those AIDS pills down. Can't take it on an empty stomach.
Josh Zalwig wants to know when the USPSA or the Utah State matchbook will come out. The matches at the end of the month, Labor Day weekend. It'll come out when it comes out. Why does anybody care what the matchbook is? It's got a bunch of stupid
It's
advertisements that nobody looks at, stages that don't actually mean anything because they don't. But I mean,
I feel bad about the matchbook. I feel like someone out there was working very hard on the matchbook, and just no one gives a rat's ass about it.
People care about it because they need to know what squad they're on and when to start. Maybe directions to the range. But I mean, the longer you shoot this game, the more you realize that the stages, as shown, really don't mean anything other than like, hey, we're gonna have a part-time stage, or hey, we're gonna do some strong hand only shooting or something like that. But it just doesn't matter. I mean, having said that, I remember the very first major I ever went to. I actually had the matchbook, and I was like looking at the diagrams, and I'm trying to plan it all out, and I was like, oh man, I got this all figured out. And then I get there, and I'm like, it doesn't look like anything. I was like, did I show up at the wrong match? And eventually, I just don't care anymore. And so,
yep, there's good practical administrative information, but as far as the actual shooting part of the game, it doesn't matter. Show up early, walk the stages. Don't get any plans out of the book.
Don't even walk the stages.
Yeah, just
Live
show
your
up,
best
man.
life.
Grip it and rip it. Put down the white claw, start shooting.
Yeah.
Be like Steve Anderson, shoot with a cowboy hat and a cigarette in your mouth. Iron sights, the way Boomer's intended.
Get flagged with a pistol that's loaded. Have a fun time.
Best squad ever. Let's see from Drew. Now that Dave Blanton shot a match with a deagle, is Robert still going to? Yes, Robert still wants to find a deagle. I had the opportunity to get 2 of them, and I actually had the opportunity to get 2 of them for $3,000. It was one was chambered in 357, the other was 44 mag, and I went and told Andrea, and she in no uncertain terms told me no, I could not get that, because if you're going to get a Desert Eagle, it better be in 50 Action Express. Or it's kind of gay.
I would tell you the keeper out of that's probably the 44 Magnum. It does produce a lot of energy. You can pick up the brass kind of everywhere. Like, that's the one that really makes sense. A 50 Action Express, like, sure, like, it's really cool, but
yeah, but
for the 12 shots,
the side of the gun doesn't say .50, and so it just kind of ruins.
Yeah, well, lots of other guns don't say
it.
.50 on the side of them because it's
but lots of other guns isn't just like just terrible, awful Desert Eagle looky kind of thing. I mean, it's just an expectation of what you're getting. I will
say those. I saw a clip on Instagram of Dave shooting that deagle and seeing the ring of fire.
Wasn't that awesome?
Yeah, it's pretty great. That's pretty great.
He goes like the up close targets. He goes and rips 2 off of quick. That you watch that gun. Oh, it was.
We need a 50 cool. Action Express Flux Raider. Let's get them on that. They got a 10mm Sig 321. Let's get the 50 Action Express going.
Let's see what else you say. Americans did well at the IPSC Rifle World Shoot. Kyle Litzy and the U.S. men's open team won gold. Lena Michalik and the U.S. women's open team also won gold. Good for them.
Yep, solid.
Good for them. Let's see. What are your thoughts on areas to live? I'm looking for a constitutional carry states. Mildish winters, mild summer, closest to large city for work. Good gun scene, mostly 2-gun. But open to other action shooting sports, not too much into PRS. Oh, PRS. The more west, the better. Currently living in the Phoenix Valley and hate the summers, don't mind the cold, but have never dealt with the snow. And getting too old to learn how to deal with it. Somewhere with trees and mountains would be nice as well. Tired of the desert.
Cedar City, Utah. Just north of the desert of St. George. It's more mild than northern Utah. And there's got to be, it's pretty close to, you could drive down to Sups and shoot down there. And
It's far enough away from Salt Lake that I don't have to worry about people moving here.
Yeah, like Cedar City, Utah is great. Like that's if I retire, that's probably where the real estate's cheap enough for me to live and go down there and hang out. And so I think it's what I thought about.
Geez, the only place where the real estate's cheap enough for me to live is probably under the I-15 overpass.
Yeah, but it's taken by the homeless. You
And
gotta
those
fight 'em.
guys.
You'd have to fight the raccoons there as well.
Squatters' rights, it's a bitch.
Damn Franklin. Seabass. Why isn't Tommy shooting Utah State? Remember we were talking about being gay?
Yeah.
Hey,
Well,
Tom.
hold on a second. Let me get these AIDS pills down.
Why do
Yeah,
they look like dicks?
I might go shoot it and go shoot production and something like that with my USP just to go around and see people and hang out. But I don't think it's any shock to anyone who's been listening to the show that kind of realized that I got divorced this year, and kind of like the past year has been kind of a hellscape. And so I'm basically like saving all my like personal days and stuff like that to do things with my kids or if stuff comes up. And so shooting's just taking a back seat this year, and I'm gonna make a bunch of ammo. And when my life straightens out a little bit next year, then I'll be right back in it. But as far as this year goes, like, be happy you're still getting a podcast out of me. I'd say that.
That's the last question.
All right. Well, thanks. Well, thanks for bringing it down, Sebastian. Wow. Why don't you go run 30 miles and quit?
Here. Can I tell a funny story?
Sure.
Robert was talking about dying of dysentery earlier at the beginning of the podcast from pooping to death.
Yeah, cholera. I think it was cholera.
Cholera, right. And it reminded me of a case where actually we had found someone who literally shat themselves to death.
Oh no.
And talk about like that was the worst way to go. And you could kind of tell like this poor person, like you could see like they're moving around their apartment and there's just blood and shit all over the ground. And we're just like, oh, what's happening? And you're wandering around the poor place because like we're like, well, is this a suspicious death? Is this because there are two types of deaths? I don't know if you know this in the law enforcement world. There are attended and unattended. An attended death means more or less it was an expected death.
Oh, okay.
Or like a cancer patient or something along those lines where if you call their doctor and say, hey, Tommy died, he has AIDS. And then the doctor goes, yeah, probably.
Does he shoot a shadow too?
Yeah, probably. That guy looked like shit last time I saw him. He probably did die. So there's that. That's called an attended death. Unattended deaths are when you see something that it is either a suspicious or it is a unexpected death. And so this one, for instance, was a unattended death. And it was a poor, terrible experience for everyone because we're just wandering around and the poor person, they just went to bed and you could tell that they just had the worst night of their lives because there was just blood and shit everywhere. And then they just blood and shit themselves to death. And you just like, you poor thing. What a way to go. There's just poop everywhere, blood everywhere. So if you ever start bleeding out of your rectum, ladies and gentlemen, go to the hospital. Don't say, this is embarrassing. I don't want anyone to see my shame, because then you'll die and then cops will see you and the medical examiner will see you. Firefighters will see you. And then we'll talk about it for a long time about that one time we saw that there was just poop everywhere and it was horrifying.
Well, if you watch stuff like on like cholera outbreaks, like
that's what it is.
People die in like 3 hours. Like they get they just shit and vomit and then they're done in like 3 hours. And so remember, guys, public service announcement from the PARAcast: cholera is no joke, but your life could be. Get checked.
So this lady,
if your small intestine or large intestine starts coming out of your buttholes, that's a problem.
So the lady across the street, she passed away about a month ago from cancer, and she was old. She knew it, and she wasn't trying to stop her or anything like that. But she'd been in this feud with the lady, her next door neighbor, across the street, for probably the past 15 years.
That's
because awesome. Margaret, she had these what is it called? Virginia creeper vine. This plant that just kind of grows and grows and grows. And Sue Ann next door to her, she was always trying to like get her to kill it all off. And Margaret loved it. Anyway, so she passes away, and Sue Ann, like, she's like, now's my chance. And so I kid you not, this bitch is outside yesterday, and she is leaning over into Margaret's yard with this long pole, trying to cut all the Virginia creeper back while they're having open house for people to come through and actually like buy the place.
Oh my god.
And I'm like, you're horrible.
Buy the
That's
place. You
amazing.
want to cut it? Buy the place. That's part of the place.
The funniest thing about it is she gives this weird vibe of like, oh, I just love everybody and Jesus loves you. And it's like, you're a diabolical bitch.
Well, if you're gonna go cut it, like, do it like a decent person. Go in the middle of the night and actually cut it and do the work. Don't do the I'm gonna get up when everyone else is up and I'm gonna lean over the fence. It's like, if you're gonna do it, do it. Do it. OJ didn't hesitate. He's like, oh man, Nicole's with somebody. He didn't like wait till she went away. Like, he got that waiter too. And on that note, thanks for joining us. For Robert Wyatt and Jared Stepp, I'm Tom Nelson, bidding you peace, love, and soul as we depart into the open waters of the sea of life on a little tugboat we like to call the PARAcast.
Good night, everybody.
Do, do.